Hello, hello. It looks like we are live. And we have a visitor. Hello. Hello, Pippin. Say good morning. You say good morning? It's fitting that we're reading a story about monsters and devils, and here is a monster and a devil to join us. You look so grumpy. Why can't Mommy hold you and you be happy about it? Because I hate you. I hate you from the depths of my being. My heart is full of hatred. Hi, Cygnus, Alexis. Welcome. Pippin, say hello. No. I will never deign to speak to you humans. I am better than all of you. Your little feet are so cute. Welcome back to Fanfic Friday on a Saturday. I didn't want to miss another week, so I figured we'd do today. We're only doing one chapter because my voice has been very hoarse this week, and it's a pretty long chapter. But yeah, hey Jeff, hey Leon. We're getting close to the end of this one. I think next time we might be able to finish it. And the pictures are a little less goofy this time because the story actually gets I felt like it was a little more serious. You can tell the quality has ramped up a little bit because it's been by the time I was on chapter 7, I think this is, it had been a couple of years since I started it. It got kind of dark. And then next time, I think we'll have 2 or 3 chapters left, and then it'll be over. I don't think I finished writing it, but I will try and put together a kind of ending to it from what I was planning on, from what I remember I had planned on doing. Oh boy, my voice. It feels like I have sinus drainage or something, but well, thank you all for joining me. Let me get that out of the way and move this. There we go. We'll give it another minute and then we'll get started. I'll drink a little more of my coffee. I had a rough night. I don't know. I made the mistake of checking Twitter before I went to bed, and then I laid awake questioning the universe and existentiality and the existence of God. So then I decided to play Fire Emblem to forget all that, and then I fell asleep. But it was like 2 a.m. Sometimes that's better than laying awake staring at the ceiling, just questioning God. As we all must do lately. New rule, do not check Twitter at bedtime. Yeah, we are in full lockdown down here. Everybody's going a little wild. Luckily, my city hasn't had any cases, but we are 30 minutes away from the capital city that has all the cases. So I'm not going to be surprised if it spreads to where I am. So, luckily I work from home. Mom is retired. She was like, I'm gonna go to Target and JCPenney and do some errands. I was like, no, you're not. You are the demographic that gets sick. You are staying here. She's not really mad at me, but she's not taking it quite as seriously as I am, but I think that's because I'm more plugged into the news than she is. My aunt and uncle, we canceled our trip to Atlanta. They aren't taking it very seriously at all. But they're the age. They're like 70. But they are also, they're very healthy. They run every day. They go to the gym. So I'm a little less worried about them. My mom is not healthy. Hey, gaming, or Miss Vampy, I suppose I should call you, because that could get confusing. Gaming Muse, Miss Vampy Gaming. Thanks for joining us. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me know how the music sounds, if it's too loud or not. The output's kind of quiet looking, but... Alright. Okay, let's see, where did I put here it is. Okay, so we are on chapter 6, Into the Madness. In this chapter, this part of the story starts to have, some goofy chapter, section divisions. Before this, you may remember I mentioned that, my teenage self didn't put any divisions between sections, so it would just fuse perfectly into the next section, and I'd have to go, okay, what am I doing? Now, I started to actually put divisions between sections of the chapter, but they're, really edgy emo stuff. Here, it looks like this. That's what the divisions between chapters look like. It's so goofy. And sometimes it says truth or secrets. It's ridiculous. Anyway, let's get started. If you'll remember last time, Cloud got a clue that said he should head home. So that's where we're starting. It looked just the same as all those years ago. Cloud stared at his childhood home with a vague sense of disgust and awe. The yellow paint had cracked and peel. I forgot to put ED. The yellow paint had cracked and peeled, the window shutters fallen off and crooked. The door had some kind of blood splatter on it. Some kind of blood splatter. Monster splatter, human splatter. I'm already being too picky. Cloud approached warily, listening to the distant noises in the fog. When he'd left the mansion, a thick fog had taken over town. It was hard to see anything now in any direction. What he wouldn't give to have his fire materia back. The man stepped onto the porch, the wood groaning with each step. He could almost see his mother sitting there in the now empty rocking chair, reading her books. But he couldn't see her here in this darkness. A woman like her deserved to rest in a place full of light. Cloud approached the door, pulling it open, and entering his old home. The porch door swung shut behind him with a violent snap. His house was covered in a layer of dust and filth. A long, dark hall, which smelled horrendously, led to the kitchen and living room. The counter divided the two. It was covered in old, bloody newspapers. The furniture looked the same, if old and moldy. His TV screen was smashed in, as if someone had taken a bat to it. Cloud stepped lightly, broken glass cracking under his feet. The back door was boarded up haphazardly, water pooling at the base. It stank to high heaven, and Cloud quickly turned away. He trailed his hand along the back of the sofa where he and his mother had sat and watched TV together. Shaking his head, he lifted a hand to his forehead. He was sweating like an animal. It's okay. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, though it was hardly home anymore. Cloud tried opening the door to the playroom, but it was firmly shut, so he turned his attention to the stairwell. Ah! We've been invaded. We have a special guest at the door. We'll move the chair so she can come say hello. What are you doing here? Huh? No, don't eat cat food. You're not a cat. You're not a kitty. You're a puppy. How did you get upstairs? Huh? How did you do that? You don't belong up here. I'm gonna take you back downstairs, okay? Okay. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Come on, you. I left the gate open because the cats were out there, and it makes it easier for them to come and go if the gate's open. They can get down without it being open, but they can't get back up. And Lola made her way up here. All right. Dark and ominous as it was, Cloud felt his breath hitch as he approached the stairs. He walked slowly and carefully, trying to think of what was up there. His old room, his mother's room, and a bathroom. That was all. Nothing to fear. He reached the top and stepped into a puddle of water. If he thought the first floor reeked, the second floor was a whole nother story. It was like something had died up here. Uh-oh. Cloud squashed that thought quick and kept moving. The door to his mother's room, first on the left, wouldn't open. So he moved on to his room. The man's heart stopped beating at the sight of... Oh, no! His heart stopped beating? That's not... No, skipped a beat? Oh, no! He saw his bedroom and he died! The man's heart stopped beating at the sight of it. It was just the way he'd left it, down to the soldier posters on the walls. Everything was old and frayed, as if he'd been away for decades, but it was still there. His stomach flew into his throat as Cloud was faced with his childhood. Yeah, I'm being faced with my childhood right now, and it's pretty upsetting, huh, Cloud? His bed was torn up, blanket thrown about, pillows scattered to the floor. His mother never would have approved, Cloud thought with a chuckle. The bookshelves were full, though some items had fallen to the ground. Cloud picked up one of his favorite comic books off the floor, felt how wet and nasty it was in his hands. He placed it back on the shelf. What had happened to this place? Why was it all nasty and wet? When he'd watched it burn down all those years ago, why did it still stand? Shaking his head, Cloud almost turned and left the room, but something on his desk caught his eye. There was a key and an arrow. An arrow had been carved into the surface of his desk. Cloud grimaced at the sight of long, jagged cuts, thin and soaked in blood. There were small pieces of white on the desk. Cloud examined one. A fingernail? He pushed his disgust away, dropping the nail and picking up the keys. He looked up. The arrow was pointing towards his bed. He glanced back and forth before walking over. Cloud tore the rest of the bedspread from the bed, then the sheets. What he saw beneath made him jump away. On his mattress was a great bloody red stain, tinged with black, blue, green, and yellow, and other nasty colors that shouldn't be seen in human blood. Oh boy. There were chunks of nasty yellow-white flesh, flecks as if it had been ripped from someone's skin. Whoever had been lying on this bed had been beaten badly, perhaps to death. He shivered at the thought of something like that in his room. The man shook his head, wanting nothing more than to leave, but he had to keep pressing on. So he grabbed hold of the mattress, soaked by death, and pulled. The bed frame rolled with it across the floor. Cloud stepped around it to see what lay underneath. Beneath his bed was a door, a small square thing made of metal, rusted and old, with chains lying on it. But the chains weren't holding it down anymore. Cloud knelt by the entrance, tracing it with his fingers. Why was this under his bed, and where did it lead? Only one way to know, he whispered. He grabbed the chains and tossed them aside, wincing at the gritty feel of wet, rusted metal. He grabbed the handle and pulled up, revealing a tunnel underneath. Which edgelord wrote this fic? A 15-year-old muse is the edgelord that wrote this fic? God. The man jumped down, falling 5 or 6 feet. The hole was dirt, despite the fact he was on the second floor of his house and should have been jumping into his living room. There was a small tunnel ahead. A child might have stood in it easily, but he was a bit too tall. Cloud approached and glanced within. It was too dark to see anything. Dare he get on his knees and crawl through? He would be very vulnerable, but he had to keep moving. Resolute, Cloud knelt down and crawled into the tunnel, his heart hammering in the dark. So that's obviously Silent Hill 4 right there. And... oh, I forgot that we gotta set up the... Come on, you. Set this up. Yeah, I think the quality of the story is definitely improved as we've been moving further, but there is definitely an edginess to it that is very teenage. Still, it's definitely not the worst thing I've written, for sure. I think that still goes to, probably that Zemnis fanfic we read. Oh god, that was something. Alright. Vague visions in the fog. A sleeping town lost in mountains and snow. Within lies darkness. In the shadows of haunted streets, poisoned by filth and decay, monstrous demons make their home. Many of them wandered the horrid halls of long-abandoned mansions, their wailing echoing pitifully all around. In the shroud of horrors, a young man was terribly lost, horrified and surrounded by danger as he barreled aimlessly down creaking halls. Without hope of escape, he ran, unable to see where he was going or what was following behind. Blue eyes widened in terror, chest rising and falling at a rushed pace. The man raced off further into darkness, with nowhere to go. All that was in italics. Cloud! Tifa Lockhart bolted upright in bed, sweat soaking her clothes. A dream that had been much too real. Clutching the sheets, the woman's mind raced, trying to remember every detail of her dark vision. She leapt to her feet. Sit down, Lockhart. She'd been halfway to the door when Shalua's voice was heard. We have to go. We have to find him. The woman was constantly moving, dancing about restlessly. We have to go. Shalua shook her head as she stood. We will. But right now, you and I need to talk. Tifa paused in her pacing. The other woman, arms crossed, moved slowly past the bed to the open window. It was snowing outside. The sky was clouded gray, and the snow falling to the ground was more like slush. It would be gone by morning. For now, it was mixing with rain and mud, which turned the pure snow to a nasty... Oh, gross. That's not fun snow. That's just dirt. It occurred to me recently it might be important for you to know more than what I've been telling you, Shalua admitted with a tight voice. That is to say, when I saw you panicking over Cloud in the parking lot, I realized you are connected to this more than I thought. Turning, she closed her eyes. If I took you there now, knowing nothing, you'd die. Then tell me, what's going on? Pain came across the woman's face and she sighed. It's hard to say, hard to understand, even harder to live through. She removed her glasses, cleaning them with the edge of her coat. You have to understand. What you have to understand is that monsters aren't always atrocities. Sometimes, she replaced the glasses, turning a cold glare upon the other woman. Sometimes monsters look just like us, like gods and angels. They can be beautiful. What happened to my town, Tifa murmured, and why is Cloud going there? He was drawn by the darkness, something that's inside, that no amount of time can hide. It's a disease people like him and people like me carry within. Hatred. Madness. Could even say love has a hand in it. She smirked at an inside joke, turning her gaze to the dirty snow outside. Shalua's voice was taut with pain and fear, so much so Tifa felt her own heart clench. Slowly she approached the woman and sat beside her. You're right, there is something inside Cloud that's been tearing him apart. I've seen it. What I want to know is what is in that town that he could be looking for. Tifa clenched her fists, but Shalua only shrugged. Who knows what he's looking for? Could be looking for himself. Listen to me, the woman turned to face Tifa. You and I are both heading into town to save people we love. Everyone says love is blind. She groaned and turned her gaze. Over her slumped shoulders, Tifa could see the black snow falling harder. The window was almost clouded over. Just remember, Tifa, even the darkest secrets will be revealed in time, and the thing you're trying to save could very well kill you. She really didn't explain anything. She said she was there to explain things, but she mostly was just vague again and mysterious. Shalua's not very good at this. Oh, man. Sid and Vincent stepped into Nibelheim's streets with relief, covered in sweat and blood. Sid was, at least. Vincent had yet to shed anything, and the only blood covering him was the blood of monsters he'd killed. What is this guy? The Southerner wondered, almost afraid he'd found something worse than the monsters. But his fear of being alone won over his fear of the stranger. In this hellhole, the last thing he wanted was nobody at his back. The foggy streets of the town echoed with ominous and random sounds, things one wouldn't expect to hear. The banging of metal, screeching of steel. What was this place? Sid grunted and spat on the dirt, then turned to his ally. Well, now what? He muttered, glancing around. I ain't got the first fucking clue where to look for Shara, but I sure as hell don't want to just wander this place. He gripped the steel bar in his hands tight. He'd He'd found it in the labyrinth below, and it was stained with the blood of creatures he'd bashed to death. Vincent stepped forward, scanning the murky distance. I cannot tell you where to look, but perhaps it would be a place your Shara had ties to. Sid nodded. That made sense. Well, she said her family lived here, but sure as hell don't look like it, and if they did, they're dead. He crossed his arms, bar tucked under it, and thought. Got it, he grinned. Cher and I used to ferry supplies here for the lab. Maybe she headed to the old docks. Sid glanced around. It weren't a huge place, not too many airships headed this far north, but if I remember right, it was past the cemetery away from town. Hey, Jono, welcome. Vincent nodded. Then it's this way. He stalked ahead, cape swirling behind him, and Sid turned to follow. Together they traversed the dark streets, alert and afraid, turning corners with weapons raised. They came down a side alley, entered a larger street, and turned left. But as they came through the fog, the two found the road blocked off by a towering metal gate, covered in tarps and locked tight. Sid moved forward, glancing over it, reading the words painted on it in dripping scrawl. The nightmare returns. That is almost literally just taken from Silent Hill 2. Returns, the blonde muttered to himself. Something about the haphazardly painted message ran a chord of apprehension through the pilot's mind. Something felt familiar about it. Groaning, he turned away, shaking his head. We won't get through here, Vincent muttered. He turned and followed the angry pilot. They wandered the foggy streets, searching for a way, propelled by alertness and fear, until Sid heard a frightening familiar sound and his body jolted. Hear that? His voice cracked, and he jumped when he heard it again. Vincent paused, alert. Got another full-body screech I gotta do here. Aga! It's not scary if it makes me laugh every time. It came from west of here. Vincent turned towards the screen, but Sid backed away from it. Let's get the fuck out of here, the man yelled. Vincent shook his head. And if it is one of your crewmen? That made the captain pause. He cursed before running towards the screaming. The agonized yelling ended by the time Sid turned onto the street. He slowed to a jog as Vincent caught up and cursed at the sight of the body. It was torn to bits and entirely covered in blood. Having just been attacked, it was still bleeding from the gaping hole in its stomach. It wasn't even possible to tell what it used to look like anymore. Hey, Zako, you are right. Very good eye. That is from the Silent Hill Alchemilla mod. Shit, Sid coughed, turning away in disgust, but Vincent approached. He didn't seem bothered, kneeling by the decimated body. Sid put his hands on his knees and kept coughing. The other man reached a tentative gloved hand into the person's dead pocket. Person's dead pocket? No. Dead person's pocket. Something was stuck in it, glued in by the dried blood. Vincent pulled it out, revealing a badly soaked piece of folded paper. Sid glanced over his shoulder, face pale. What's that? The other stood and unfolded it with his gloved hand. I dropped it. I left it in that dark, dark hole. I need it so bad, but I will never go back there, back to that dark, dark. Looks like I won't make it through the nightmare anymore. The words were written in a dark green and brown, running down the page. At the bottom was the imprint of a key, which was now long gone. Vincent reread the short paragraph, thoughts clicking together in his head. He turned to Sid. I think I know where we need to go. Sid approached warily, eyes averted from the corpse. Yeah, where? Vincent gestured to the note. Our friend here had a key to that fence blockade, but he lost it in the dark. Vincent knelt by the body, gesturing to what it wore. Look closely. There was nothing he wanted to do less, but with a queasy stomach, Sid complied. The body was wearing very generic solid pants and shirt, with a number on the top left shoulder. Sid's eyebrows furrowed. If the body hadn't been soaked in blood, its clothes might have been orange. Prison jumpsuit. Vincent stood. Dark hole indeed. That's likely where he left the key. Fucking great. Just where I want to go in a place like this. Sid frowned and turned away, glancing around the town. Why the hell would a little town like this have a prison anyway? Vincent passed by him, seeming to know the way. A little town with a very big secret. Did I finish Fatal Frame? I did! And I do believe it is now posted to the Fatal Frame playlist. Everything except for yesterday's stream, or the day before yesterday's stream is live. And it'll go live today. Let's see. The little dirt tunnel seemed to go on forever. Oops, where'd my window go? Here we go. Only getting darker and smaller as he went. Cloud felt the walls digging into his shoulders, the top pressing on his back as his heart hammered. He did not want to die underground. Of all the ways to die, that was perhaps the worst. He wiped his eyes as more dirt fell into his face. Luckily for him, or perhaps not, he did not die in the little tunnel. Eventually, something akin to a light appeared in the distance. Though it was so soft and dim, Cloud could hardly see it. It was another 30 feet before he finally found the exit. The way out of the tunnel was covered by some sort of clear, see-through plastic. Cloud pushed his hands against it, tried to get it to move, but it wouldn't budge. Focusing, he tried seeing through it. On the other side was some sort of white room. Was something in there? There were a lot of words written on the walls, but they were blurred by the barrier, so Cloud could hardly read them. A hand slammed against the plastic on the other side, and Cloud screamed. Jumping, he hit his head against the dirt as he scrambled away from the window. The hand was bleeding and covered in grime. Short silver bangs covered the person's eyes from view, as a head rested motionlessly against the barrier. It did not twitch or move, but bled against the plastic, from a gash in its forehead. Cloud approached warily. It didn't seem alive, but was somehow standing on its own. He watched it, almost entranced by the strange, ethereal quality of it. The dripping blood moved down its nose. The drop of dark liquid moved downward, floating in the cleft above the lip. This is a lot of description of just blood. Then the lips moved against the plastic. Cloud almost missed the message. I'll help you if you help me. Help? Confused, Cloud watched him speak again. What did this person mean by help? Scritch, scratch. Cloud felt his spine stiffen. He turned to look behind him, only able to turn slightly due to the tight space. It was far too dark to see anything. But he thought he could hear something moving through the earth. Something with claws digging into the tunnel. Frantic, Cloud turned and nodded vigorously, moving as close as he could to the barrier. I'll help you if you help me, he returned. But the stranger did nothing but grin, so Cloud repeated it, pressing against the plastic. If it had not stood oh my god, no! He pressed his own mouth against the barrier in an effort to push through. If the plastic had not stood between them, the two would have been touching lips. Oh, I had to get a little of my homoeroticism through there. You know, I had to. Hey, Levi! Welcome to Fanfic Friday, in which I read old stories I wrote in elementary, middle, and high school. You have come to the Silent Hill Final Fantasy VII crossover I wrote in my freshman year of high school. And it sure is something. It's not even the worst thing we've read. It actually has a lot more quality than a lot of the things we've read. That's it, I'm kink shaming. The scratching was getting closer, and Cloud tried to ignore what sounded like heavy, labored breathing getting closer to him. In the small space, he was trapped, unable to run or fight. Whatever was coming was getting very close, its claws pulling at the dirt as it moved towards its prey. Finally, the silver-haired stranger moved, backing away from the plastic. Cloud could see he was injured very badly. Not only was he bleeding from a large gash in the head, but his left arm looked as if it had been grated with a serrated knife. Blood poured from jagged and ripped wounds, the skin flopping uselessly on his arm. The muscle could be seen under what remained of the shredded shirt he wore. Cloud almost threw up, but he was too caught up in his fear of death to be disgusted. In the next instant, Cloud watched the stranger pick up a sword and press the edge into the small gap between the wall and the plastic. With one arm, he proceeded to use it as a lever to pry the barrier open. It was working, as the thing inched open, but it wasn't working fast enough. Cloud could almost feel the claws raking down his back as he reached out and pushed against the barrier. It was moving, but so was the monster. Cloud turned and gasped in horror as he saw it 10 feet away and closing in. A giant mouth split its face and neck in two, with jagged rows of rotting teeth filling it. Its long, gangly arms dug into the dirt to pull it forward, blood and grime trailing behind it. Cloud stopped looking, hyperventilating as he shoved harder against the barrier. Hey, Sky Center! Yeah, you did miss the start, sorry. But, we're having a good grand time with horrible monsters trying to eat us. Finally, the plastic snapped off the wall, and Cloud tumbled to the floor of the room. He hit his head hard against the tile, colors flashing before his eyes and ears ringing. For one short instant, he was knocked out, and when he came to a moment later, the demon was above him, clutching the wall, snarling violently. It opened its mouth and screeched, saliva dripping from its gaping maw onto Cloud's cheeks. He was frozen on his back, staring death in the face. But just as the creature was leaping down to rip his pale neck, the silver-haired man leapt into action. With his one good arm, he swung the sword and sliced the creature's arm off, throwing it off balance. Screaming, the thing fell to the ground beside Cloud, writhing in agony, as the man leapt over Cloud and knelt, shoving his sword through the thing's head. In seconds it was dead, body spasming in its last moments. Cloud watched, his own body shaking uncontrollably, as the silver-haired stranger turned to him. Kneeling beside him, the man put his right hand on Cloud's forehead. Cold, huh? Cloud looked down. His fingers were trembling, pale and covered in sweat. Heartbeat erratic. The man looked back up at the ceiling, wondering vaguely if he was having a heart attack or going into shock. He glanced at the other, saw his mutilated left arm again, and immediately looked away. The stranger grunted and stood, crossing the room. He dropped his sword onto his cot and then knelt by a box at the foot of the bed. Cloud watched, vision blurring, as he pulled out some kind of medicine bottle. This will calm you down. I don't recommend it for others, but for you and me, it'll work. He held the bottle, clamped between his thighs, and used his good hand to open it. He removed a pill and then placed the lid back. When he approached, the blonde was seeing triple of everything. The pill in the stranger's hand were green and horse pills. Was a green horse pill. Cloud did not like horse pills. His mother used to give them to him, and they always tasted bad. But this wasn't his mother, no. Oh. Cloud tried to force the man away. His tongue pushing the pill out. Frowning, the stranger rolled his eyes as he put the pill against his own lips. You're more trouble than you're worth. Pill in his mouth, the man knelt and pressed his lips against Cloud's. He remained there, pushed the pill into the other man's mouth, fighting him until he swallowed it. Once it was down his throat, the stranger moved Cloud's head into his lap and comforted him with a hand on his forehead. What are horse pills? Okay, so I wonder if that's a colloquial thing. Around here, we call a horse pill one of those really big pills that... that I don't know, it takes a lot of water to swallow. We've always called them horse pills around here. Hey, just another pest! I wonder if that is a southerner thing, maybe. Yay! Someone else recognized what I was talking about! It's not literally a pill for horses, it's just a really big pill. Kind of like a big vitamin. Yeah, they're not fun to take. It was a good 10 minutes for Cloud to feel relatively normal. What the hell happened? His strained voice cracked as he used it. I haven't the foggiest, and even if I did, why would I tell you? You're the one who owes me twice over now. Cloud's vision wasn't quite clear as he looked up at the foggy sight of the green-eyed, silver-haired man. Sephiroth? Do I look like a friend of yours? As his eyes returned to normal, Cloud realized this man was much younger than Sephiroth had been, his chin less defined, his eyes more open, and overall, he appeared much younger. Who are you? Kadaj. You're Cloud, aren't you? When the blonde's eyes widened, he smirked. I knew it. Of course that's why the pill worked. And why you look so handsome. Our kind always does. Cloud slowly sat up, rubbing his head. He caught sight of the dead monster across the way. Did that thing do this to me? I told you I don't know. Here. He tossed the bottle to the blonde. If it happens again, you'll need those. I have plenty. This box always has what I need, except for the goddamn key. Key? Kadaj nodded across the room. It was then Cloud took in their surroundings. The room was entirely white, with a small cot in the corner with the medicine box, and the walls were padded. The floor looked like it used to be, but in most places it was as if someone had torn up the padding to reveal dingy brown tile. Cloud then saw what Kadaj wore. What was left of it was white, too. In fact, it looked like a straitjacket, with the ties untied so they hung loosely off his arms. On the far wall was a thick door with a small window to look out of. I've been trying to get out of here forever, but other than that tunnel and the door, there's no way, and as you can see, I'm hardly fit to crawl my way out of here. Kadaj gestured to his brutally torn arm, which would never have supported him through the long trip out of the tunnel. and I don't have the key to the door. So we have some Cloud and Kadaj shipping here by the sounds of it. Yes, very much obviously some flirting going on here. Because I was a horny teenager. I'm pretty sure Sephiroth Cloud was my end game, but clearly I just had to. So we're trapped? Kadaj shook his head. I said, you can't do it. I said, I can't do it, but you can. The man smirked and pointed up. Cloud followed the direction to see a high vent above them on the ceiling. Together, the two of us can reach that. You can climb up and get out of here. Find that key, set me free, and I'll consider our debt repaid. Your life for my freedom. Cloud examined the vent, then looked at Kadaj. Who are you, and where are we? I told you, I'm Kadaj. As for where we are, that would be the basements beneath Phoenix Hospital. Phoenix Town. I was locked in here a long time ago, and I've been trying to get out ever since. Something in Cloud's gut told him that wasn't the whole story. Why were you locked up? The other man scoffed violently and stood, disgust in his eyes. What is this, the Inquisition? All I want is to get out of here. All I want is answers. I saved your life. The blonde stood. I know that, and I'll pay you back. I just want to know what's going on here. What the hell, he shouted, angry as all his frustration and fear accumulated, is going on here? Kadaj paused and looked him over again. Huh. Here I thought you were just a puppet. Apparently you're trying to move against your own strings. Our very own Pinocchio. Confusion filled the blonde's eyes. What are you talking about? Ignoring the question, Kadaj gestured around with his good arm. I was locked in here because they feared me. They wanted me. They wanted me and they were scared of wanting me, so they buried me so deep no one would find me. No one but you, apparently. But maybe that's because you felt the same pain I have. You've been burned by the fire, too. That's what must have led you here. I don't know what you're talking about. I just came here to find my friends. Your dead friends? Cloud clenched his fists. They aren't dead. I won't believe it until I see it myself. For some reason, that made Kadaj laugh, his shoulders shaking. As they shook, the loose skin on his arm fumbled uselessly and more blood poured out. His laughing became frantic gasping, but he still had a smile on his face. Sensing Kafka Kucha vibes? Oh god. Oh no. Oh god, are we building a fanfiction lore here? some connecting tissue between these stories? Oh no. Okay, believe what you want. I just want out. He looked up and Cloud saw the pain in his eyes. He looked from the green pupils to the yellow, decaying skin and the wound on his forehead. Who did this to you? So full of questions, aren't you? Kadaj smiled lightly. I'll make you a deal. I'll answer every one of your damn questions when you get me out of here. Cloud paused for a second, looking into those eyes before he chose. Deal. Take a drink every time sipping is hinted at. Oh, be careful, don't die. Kadaj stood beneath the vent as Cloud began second-guessing the deal. The silver-haired man waited for Cloud to climb up, glancing over his shoulder. Well? Cloud's eyes were fixed on the bruised skin of Kadaj's left shoulder, the flapping skin that had been torn from flesh. Kadaj chuckled. Cloud met his eyes and took in a deep breath, finally setting his hands on the other man's flesh. He pulled himself up, trying his best to be gentle, but there was no way to be as he set his feet on the man's dying, bleeding skin. Kadaj grimaced in agony, but didn't make a sound as he held Cloud's right foot with his good hand. The blonde rushed to remove the vent, which had rusted and turned brown, but with a good few tugs it came off and he threw it on the bed. He almost hesitated before climbing up, but he heard Kadaj let out a faint wheeze. Steeling himself, he reached inside, grabbed the edge, and struggled to pull himself up. Kadaj let out a sob of relief as he collapsed to the ground, a gusher of blood pouring from his upper arm where Cloud had stood with his mud and grime-covered boots upon the wounds. He glanced to see the man scrambling into the air duct. In a moment, Cloud looked out. Any idea where the key is? Kadaj nodded, sweat pouring down his brow. It's... He paused, licking his lips, brow furrowed. 3rd floor, doctor's office. Hurry. With sympathetic eyes, Cloud nodded before turning and hurrying down the tunnel. He had a feeling Kadaj wouldn't last much longer. He couldn't dwindle. He had to help him, had to save him. After all, he owed the man his life twice. I'm very suddenly getting Maria in the prison cell vibes here. That's a bad omen for Kadaj. A voice deep in the distance, in the part of his mind, whispered something else Cloud couldn't hear. There was an image that kept replaying in his head, a recollection of waking and looking up to see Kadaj, who looked so much like... Cloud crawled on, metal groaning around him as he pushed through the darkness. A car slowed to a halt at the first gas station in town. Tifa opened her door and stepped out, feeling her throat tighten as she glanced around at the place she'd once called home. Shalua stepped out next, eyes narrowed and dangerous, as she slammed her car door shut. She turned to Tifa, murmuring darkly, "Welcome home." That's all we're doing this week, because my voice was very hoarse, and we've done about 40 minutes, so that's pretty decent. Next week, we might be able to finish it. I'm gonna have to examine and see, but we're very close to the end of this story. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting chapter, though, with Kadaj showing up. Obviously, this was, I think this was around the time... Let's see if it actually says when No, it doesn't say when I published it. I'd have to look it up. Probably closer to the end of high school, because I know it took me, like, all 4 years of high school to finish writing this story. Anyway, thanks for joining me, guys. Sorry I missed last week and missed yesterday, but I've just been working on a lot and got a little busy. But we will try and finish this story next week and then go on to our next one. So that will be that. Later today, we're going to watch the Silent Hill Revelation movie with the Discord group and riff on it, which is going to be super fun. That's going to be like 2 p.m. So join me on Twitch for that, and I'll see you guys then. Bye!